an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering the Vorkosigan Saga, Book 3-ish, depending on who you ask, chapters 4 through 6 of The Warrior's Apprentice. In these chapters, Miles is quite a little stinker. My goodness. Just out here, like, really being a lot more forward-thinking than a lot of adults, probably, but also not forward-thinking at all, maybe. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Jen for commissioning this episode. Jen, if you are out there, I appreciate you. So you guys, yeah, this is just not what I was expecting of Miles. He seemed so much more... He seemed like much more navel-gazy in a way, despite there being like some evidence to the contrary. It felt sometimes like he's just trying to like force himself out of that or prove that he can be more or whatever. And then these chapters, it was like, no, this kid's a full-on bard class. Like, he's a fast talker. He's actually singing at one point, so I feel like right there. He is somebody who clearly is running on, like, pure charisma a lot of the time. And ballsy. And also, it's like he's able to sort of put a plan together on the fly, but there's a sense of it almost having been something that he had thought of before ahead of time, but not in a real way. It's just that he is accumulating strays so quickly that I am almost like, were you just on a shopping trip? Like, what? How did you run into all these people? So anyway, before that, let's talk about chapter 4. He runs into his mother, who calls him Heart, which I don't really know how I feel about. What do you guys think? Because, you know, there's a certain type of, what would you call this? A term of endearment, in which case people say, my heart or my dear heart. And I think either one of those is a straight up no on my side. Like, they both feel too flowery, and because of that, insincere. Whether or not that person actually was being sincere, it just kind of comes off that way. But heart, without the my dear or my, I don't know. It's fine, I guess. But it just took me off guard. And we get a little bit of her talking to him about politics in general, because she's like, do you know where your father is? And she's figuring that he's probably going to get something to drink. And she's like, yeah, I probably should stop him from overdoing it, because he gets so that he just like starts telling hard truths when he's been drinking, and we don't need any of that right now. And let's see, that egg sucker Count Vordrosa just arrived in company with Admiral Hessman. He'll have trouble ahead if those two are getting in bed together. I shouldn't think the far right could muster that much support with all the old soldiers solidly behind father. Oh, Vordrosa's not a rightist at heart. He's just personally ambitious, and he'll ride any pony that's going his way. He's been oozing around Gregor for months. Flattery and innuendo, oblique criticisms, and these nasty little barbs stuck in all the boys' self-doubts. I've watched him at work. I don't like him. Ugh. That sounds agonizing. Don't you hate people like this? Like, not just opportunists, but people who just, it doesn't even occur to them to feel bad about exploiting somebody's, their personal, like, what's the word I want? I keep wanting to say their personal self-consciousnesses. And you know that is not what I mean. But like the worst things that we think about ourselves, and knowing that and being able to sort of weaponize that against them, it's just really an ugly type. And that person being around Gregor with the kind of power Gregor has access to is really scary. And then he says, well, I'm sure you don't have to worry about Gregor. And she says, well, Vordroza's not the only one who would do what they needed to sink their claws into him. And she says, damn the long-range good of Barriar, or Gregor for that matter. Oral law. What a way to try and run an interstellar power. And she mentions, like, not that they don't write a constitution. And you guys, I just really would have expected them to have something in place that you could call a constitution. I am genuinely surprised to find out that there isn't anything like that. Oral only? For real? Like, that does sound bonkers to me. I guess. How does that even work? Okay, anyway. And she says something about that idiot Ivan, and that Alice Vorpatrol is like trying to track down his father, because she has been expecting him to stand in loco parentis to that idiot Ivan, which is fine up to a point. But she nailed me a while ago when she couldn't find Errol. Seems she wants Errol to stand the boy up in a corner somewhere and brace him for swiving the servant girls. Is it swiving? I've only ever seen it written down. And I think she says swiving, actually, in the audiobook. Or he says it, the narrator. Swive. Yes. It's swive. Okay. So, it's phrased as, which ought to embarrass them both thoroughly. I expected better of Cordelia in this moment. It's never framed as a, like, real issue of power dynamics that it should be. And I feel like, considering her history and the way that she has seen things work around here, she should be a little bit more sensitive to this sort of thing than she seems to be. And I was hoping that maybe she was, like, just sort of downplaying it here because she didn't want to get into a whole thing about it. But later on, when we eventually do see Errol, and he kind of tells him, consider yourself reprimanded and be on your way, very disappointed with him also. I thought for sure that we were going to have a moment with him, and he was going to really kind of bring it home, like, you know, that's a fucked up thing to do, right? Like, this isn't, I don't know, this author has been very progressive in the way that she has written a lot of social issues, and it genuinely surprised me that, considering the way that she has handled talk about rape and the trauma of it, and, you know, the strange nuances of it depending on how it's, like, carried out and who's doing it, I really thought that she would handle this with a little bit more gravity than she does. It's treated very much like he just got caught, like, fucking too many times. But when it's the servants, that's a whole different energy. So, let's see. El Jefe says, that would justify calling him an idiot, but I remember in the 90s, Ray Bradbury was asked about Bob Packwood, a handsy congressman, and downplaying it as hijinks. Oh boy. No right to use a delightful word like hijinks to describe sexual harassment. Yeah, I was just really caught off guard by this, you guys. It's funny though, like, for the most part, how many of the social issues in these books are handled feels really, really up to date. There's only a few things that are sort of like, all right, well, maybe not. And even like the inclusion of hermaphrodites as a particular sex it's so close to the sort of open-mindedness that would be very like willing to talk about cis versus transgenders, and I feel like were this written today, she would absolutely be including that as well. And it's just so like, so close, And I don't even think it's handled particularly badly, but it is just a strange like detail that feels like she's decided like, in the future, I'm going to have this thing that's considered quite rare and almost like a birth defect today be a distinct sex, because I wanted to make it that like sex becomes a whole new sort of horizon. And so it makes a lot of sense that that's the way that she went with it. But it's just funny to consider like how different that really looks for us today. So anyway, Miles says something about how like it'll take a torpedo to get his father out of office, and she just like really dismissively says that's been tried. And she says, we've been lucky so far. Her eye fell on him wistfully, mostly. And I was a little bit interested in the fact that the way that she behaves here isn't as much of a source of rage for him as it is when his father insinuates that he is sorry for his career and the way that it's affected Miles. When his dad is looking at him and is like apologizing, Miles, and I'm not criticizing him at all, but he really reacts with a kind of anger I wasn't prepared for. And in a lot of ways, I get it, actually. It makes some sense to me that he would be very resentful. But I just thought, once I saw that moment, I thought back to this and I was sort of like, he isn't as upset at her, even though the sentiment kind of felt the same to me. I don't know. I think maybe there's also like a slight difference in the way that it feels coming from his mother versus coming from his father. And that's just part of the patriarchy that is like baked into the way he has been raised, that it's like the sadness of his mother is taken as, of course she will be, she's your mother, but his father, he has more of a desire to impress than her in a certain way, and that might be it, and I would accept that as an explanation. So wet darkness had fallen outside, turning the windows into dim mirrors of the subdued and mannered revelry within Vorkosigan House. Subdued and mannered revelry is a really great way to describe this. And there has been just like a parade of people in and out. And eventually he's going to the table to get something to eat. And somebody says, stay away from those purple things. I think there's some kind of seaweed. Is your mother on a nutrition kick again? And it's that idiot Ivan. You guys. So last episode, he said something about hoping he didn't run into Ivan. And then it was clarified that he was like, I'll just feel so bad if he's crowing over how well he's done and I have to sit through it. And I was like, oh, good. I'm glad it's about something specific and not just about how he doesn't like Ivan. I spoke too soon. It turns out he really does not like Ivan, to the point that he feels like, all right, he wants to hang out. Normally I'd refuse, but I'm going to go with it this time because he's suggested drinking. And I guess that I can deal with him as long as I have gotten good and liquored up. That is devastating. That's like, if I ever found out that somebody felt like I was so difficult that they needed to get drunk before they talked to me, like, depending on the person, that might be just a straight up, like, compliment, you know? But that just really is much more harsh than I thought. And, you know, Ivan's mother had been described in the previous book when Cordelia is with her as being a little bit too fussy over her baby, and that, like, having this wedding to help distract her kept the baby from also getting too fussy, because the more she fussed over him, the more he fussed, period. So I think if you had asked me to guess what Ivan's personality was going to be like, I really would have found him, like, expected him to be more sort of, like, peevish and entitled. And instead, it's really kind of giving himbo. Like, he's described as irritatingly attractive, and, you know, he did well enough in his physical exam and everything to get put into the military. He's also just such a drinker that later on he immediately, like, comes to Miles with, hey, they were going to pour this wine for the guests, and I managed to snag it. It's a real nice bottle. I thought maybe we could go somewhere. It's one of your dad's, and that we could hide and drink it together. What do you think? And then later on, when Vorkosigan comes into Miles's room and surprises that idiot Ivan, he says something like, I expected you to be hiding in a corner somewhere drinking my wine, which was quite literally exactly what was going on. So I'm just saying that I think if you are drinking so much that people can tell that you're going to be off drinking at any given time, I feel like that is a moment where you need to reevaluate some things. You know what I'm saying? Like, just stop for a second and consider your choices and whether or not this is the kind of person that you want to be seen as. And I don't know, maybe he has, and maybe he's just like, I'm fine with it. But it told me something about him, and I'm gonna kind of put him in, like, the himbo / frat boy kind of, you know what I mean? He is not, oh God, I was about to say he's not the dangerous type of frat boy, but he's fucking the maidservants. So actually, yeah, that's exactly him. Uh-oh, don't like that. Oh well. But yeah, so Ivan is he's in much worse shape in terms of his overall intellect and his personal code of conduct than I was expecting. So yeah, they go off to Miles's room, and Ivan says, I saw Bothari carrying you off the other day. Too bad. You're really the lucky one, though. And I don't even think that Ivan is doing this whole, like, you're really the lucky one. Some people would be doing this to try and cheer Miles up. Some people would be doing this in a sort of patronizing way. I don't think it's either. I think he genuinely feels that Miles is the lucky one because he doesn't want to be doing this. Like, it is not him putting his foot in his mouth, trying, like, with good intentions to cheer Miles up and accidentally saying the exact wrong thing. It's him not thinking for one moment about how Miles would react. And that is so much worse and so much more like, he's so self-centered that he can't see how irritated Miles is through this whole conversation. And I really kind of liked it because when Miles doesn't like him and is thinking I have to be drunk to put up with him, I was picturing, like, the kind of irritation that comes when you are around a person who is, like, snotty or has, like, real bad takes on stuff that they share, and that may be also part of his personality. But this kind of person who is so unintentionally hurtful, this takes a kind of patience that is a really specific thing. And I could understand, especially Miles being in the situation that he is in, being around somebody like this, how much it would drive him up the wall. You know, it's always so difficult because I don't want to say I'm a confrontational person, because in person, I'm often not. But the reason is something that, like, I think all of us understand, is that there are times and places where you feel like you can sort of be like, hey, what the fuck? And there are times and places where what they just said isn't even the main issue at hand. And so stopping and focusing on that right now feels like it would distract from the actual, like, main event. And you need to talk about that the most. So I could definitely see how, with a guy like this, who's just so in his own head, that stopping him and being like, what do you mean? And then you have to, like, explain to him your perspective and why that was hurtful. And I bet I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that Ivan would be, like, really upset to realize how thoughtless he was. But it wouldn't change the way he approached things, and he would just do it again very shortly. And so you're just kind of over and over having the same conversation, and I'm sure that gets really irritating and tiresome. So the just this self-centeredness of it it's something that I have run into with a few people, and it's always, like, shocking, because I am certain that I have done this sort of thing too. Said something without really considering it, like, and the relevance to the person I'm talking to. But whenever I have been in the room with somebody doing this with another witness, and, like, we make eye contact, like, oh my God, did they just say that? It's always just such a moment, you know? So he says, if you're trying to duck my dad, this might not be the best place. Oh, I've always had the feeling he doesn't like me, he added glumly. Oh, he doesn't mind you, said Miles, taking pity. At least as you appear on his horizon at all. Although I think I was 14 before I found out that Ivan wasn't your middle name. That idiot Ivan was beginning a lifetime of imperial service tomorrow. I don't know if Ivan caught that he understood what he meant there. I think Ivan's so in his own head that he's, like, just doesn't even notice it. And if he does, I am so curious, like, how he would feel about it. I just really want to know. Are you, like, is it just going to be like, yeah, I figured? Or would that be, like, truly hurtful in a really profound way for him? I can't tell. So this is when his father knocks on the door, and Vorkosigan comes in and is like, oh God, he's here. Okay. And Ivan's like, did my mom speak with you, sir? And he says, yep. And Ivan goes pale. And Miles is like, why is he? And then realizes, like, oh, he doesn't see that my dad is kind of cracking up a little bit. Like, Errol is taken so seriously, and for very good reason. Don't let me make it sound like that's not valid. But he is seen as a type of figure that wouldn't have the kind of underlying sense of humor about things that he does. And so people misread his expression. And this instance of him just, like, thinking this guy is going to ream him, and then being genuinely taken off guard when he just sort of is like, yeah, don't do that, dismissed. He's like, oh, I thought this man was going to dismember and eat me. That's surprising. Meanwhile, Miles, who has gotten to know his father quite well, can see that this is actually, like, a little bit funny to him. Like, irritating, yes, but also he sees how ridiculous it is, you know? And I always like that when there's somebody who is able to intimidate those around them, but a lot of that is in their imagination. I always think that that's sort of an interesting phenomenon. So, he has come here to ask why the fuck Elena was crying, and like basically is like, you didn't fucking like try to put a hand up her skirt or something, did you? Which I don't get the sense when he asks that he even really thinks that is a possibility, but it's sort of the thing to lead with, I guess, because I mean, I would understand leaping to that conclusion. And Miles doesn't actually like tell him what it is. He just says, I know what it looked like, but it wasn't. I'll give you my word if you like. And he doesn't tell him what was happening. And I expected Errol to zero in on that a little bit and to push it and be like, okay, then what was it? And I can't decide if he just gets so completely sidetracked that he forgets the main issue, or if what happened between them, as long as it wasn't Miles like acting up in this way, that he is willing to let them have their privacy about it. I'm not totally sure, but what he says is that like Elena is not a suitable test case for your sexuality. And Miles, instead of being like, oh, I would never, he just says, why not? Which I think really gives Errol a little bit of a look into the way Miles is sort of feeling, but they don't really talk about that. And Miles explains about the way that she's clearly feeling really constrained and that she has so much potential and her father doesn't let her do anything. And basically Errol is like, look, you don't understand exactly what it is that she means to Bothari. Like, she is more than just his daughter. She is a source of order and is a symbol. And I really felt bad for her when he phrased it that way, because I don't think there's... I understand that sounding like a compliment, but it really doesn't feel like one. It really feels like she isn't a person. That's the way it sounds to me. And it just made me feel very badly for her. Like, that nobody wants to, like, step in on the way that she is being put in a glass cabinet, because what they are... they're kind of allowing Bothari to turn her into his own like personal motivation for things. And I wish that there was more pushback on that. And basically in this conversation, what Errol does is like, he tries to tell Miles, look, there's more than one thing that he has done for me that has gotten me where I am, has kept you alive, has kept your mother alive. I don't think that you fully understand the extent to which I owe that guy. And if he ever asked anything of me, I would give it to him. Anything. Because that is how much I owe him. And like, you know, his father, I don't believe, is the type to say that. So I think it really makes quite an impression to hear that. And it's also difficult because I really understand not wanting to explain to your son what Bothari is and what happened in your history. I really, really get that that's like not a conversation that any parent would be eager to have. And I'm not sure how much Cordelia would want shared either, considering what she went through. But I do kind of feel like you should give your kid a little bit more, because what I keep kind of running up against, you guys, is that they are surrounded by people that know some information, if not all. And I'm really curious if there's, like, I feel like I would be worried as a parent that my kid would find this sort of thing out from somebody else, that it would become this, like, source of gossip, and they would start to get the wrong information before I told them the truth about it. I think that so few people really know the truth that it's a pretty safe secret, and that's why the assumption is there. So I think I'm willing to accept that, but I just sort of was surprised at how much of their histories together was not. There's a lot in the looking through the files earlier where Miles is like, oh, I was under the impression that Bothari blank, blank, blank. At the same time, though, as a kid, sometimes you don't even think to ask the kinds of questions about, because you just sort of take for granted that a person is in your life and that they were in your parents' life and they always probably did the same thing. And I could see simply viewing Bothari as a kind of a piece of furniture that you don't question where he came from. It's like finding out that a teacher goes to the grocery store and doesn't climb into their file cabinet to sleep overnight. So yeah, anyway, I was just sort of surprised at the fact that he is still sitting on a lot of this. So this between opening his mouth and speaking, the plan possessed him, and he starts to be like, how do you feel about me visiting grandmother? Just as Errol is saying, well, would you be okay with going to visit your grandmother? And he calls it deputizing. It's been, almost 2 years since you were to Beta Colony? And while Batons may expect to live to be 120, well, you never know. And Miles has to just be like, oh, perfect. This guy is offering me the exact thing that I was about to ask for. And then he says, can I take Elena? And he says, Bothari will be with me. Nobody's going to get mad about it. And Errol's like, I know somebody who would get mad about it. You can't think that he's going to want to take her to a place like that. And like, you asking him? And he says, fine, then I won't invite her. And Errol says, okay. And then he says, I'll have Mother invite her. Let's see him object to that. Count Vorkosigan emitted a surprised laugh. Underhanded, boy. But his tone was approving. Miles' heart lifted. And I do really love these little flashes of insight from Miles that really point to how intelligent he is. Like, being able to think in a different direction, that's a very particular kind of like point of view to shift from, and that can be really hard to do. And it really is one of the first moments of us seeing what we see of him later and making all of that sort of fall together. So he says, like, it was your mother's idea, but I think that I'll rest easier knowing that you're safe there. And he says, your work comes first, sir. I understand that. And Vorkosigan says, then you understand nothing. My work has been a blight on you from the very beginning. I'm sorry. Sorry it made such a mess for you. Mess of you. Say what you really mean, damn it. I never meant it to be so. A nod, and he withdrew. And Miles thinks apologizing to me again. He keeps telling me I'm all right, and then apologizing. Inconsistent, father. And this is so rough because I get why he thinks this. Of course, I get why he thinks this, but it's so untrue. His parents feel responsible, and they know how difficult things are for him, but they are not ashamed of him, which is what it really feels like he thinks, They are worried about him, and they are trying their best, but they aren't like in a... It's like, of course, would they prefer that their child not have this like disability that is holding them back from doing a lot of things they want to do with their lives? Yeah, of course, I'm sure. But he really has an idea of like what it means for them that is much less loving and a lot harsher than the truth. And there's no real way to like say that and convince somebody like this, because when you have this sort of certainty to the way you're viewing things, anything else is going to sound like somebody being patronizing, like you're going to believe this bullshit, you know? So, yeah, I get it. So, Chapter 5. Well, said the sleek Baton customs agent in sarcastic simulation of good cheer. If it isn't Sergeant Bothari of Barriar. And what did you bring me this time, Sergeant? A few nuclear anti-personnel mines overlooked in your back pocket? A maser cannon or two accidentally mixed up with your shaving kit? And I was reading this and I was like, wait, what exactly do you mean? And it turns out that they're at customs, and every single time Bothari tries to sneak a weapon in, it's very funny. Like, I do think that this is what I was imagining with this, because, like, I couldn't help it. I was thinking about, as a writer, you're thinking, okay, so for the next piece of my plan, I have to get Miles and Elena away from Bothari for a little while so that he can really get into some hijinks. Haha. And then being like, okay, how, like, in what situation could they ever really get away from him that he wouldn't be able to follow immediately? There would have to be somebody stopping him, and there would have to be like a lawfulness to them stopping him that he wouldn't be willing to completely disregard. And coming up with customs is like, it's a great idea. So yeah, it turns out that he's, indeed, despite having been caught every other time, he never stops trying. So they do find a few things on him. And Miles is like, all right, well, I know that you guys are still working with him, but like, we're cool, right? Can we just take off? And Bothari starts to be like, no, you fucking can't. And he's just like, okay, bye. And they just book it. It says 2 days of record searches and trudging through neglected military cemeteries in the rain, pretending to Bothari a passion for historical detail, had produced no maternal grave or cenotaph after all. Elena had seemed more relieved than disappointed by the failure of their covert search. The sergeant's own bored reactions to the tour clinched the argument, Miles conceded. And what Elena says to him, you see, Father didn't lie to me. You have a hyper imagination. And it was a strange turnaround, because the last time we saw her, she was saying, Father lied to me, and crying. And then she's accusing Miles of being the one who came up with that hypothesis. And I was like, I don't remember it going that way at all. And I don't know what could have happened to make her pull back so completely from her fears on that at this point. Just not finding her gravestone doesn't mean that he is telling you the truth. If he were telling you the truth, why wasn't it in the records? Like, finding out that she isn't dead doesn't actually solve the problem, and it doesn't prove your father innocent. But she's like undergone a complete change of perspective here that felt a little bit abrupt for me. I was just sort of like, last time we saw you, you were like sobbing and saying your life was a lie. And now you're trying to be like, see, Miles, it's fine. And I was like, Miles doesn't even push back on it either. He doesn't try and say like, you know, that I wasn't the one saying it. It's put down as Miles conceded. And I was like, but that wasn't his assertion, was it? Like, I don't know. So he wished he had not been so intimidated by the conspiracy of silence surrounding Elena's birth as to refrain from pumping Countess Vorkos again. Well, when they returned home, he would screw up his courage and demand the truth of her and let her wisdom guide him as to how much to pass on to Bothari's daughter. And I really love that it's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to make her tell me the truth, and then I will listen to her reasons for not telling Elena. I love that it's not just like, I'm going to find out because Elena deserves to know the truth. He fully accepts that if there is something secret that we haven't been told, there's probably a really good reason for it, because I trust my parents' judgment on that, which is a pretty huge thing for a kid to be able to admit. I mean, how many of us out there really trusted our parents' judgments on everything when we were his age? I definitely didn't. I definitely thought I knew better than they did, that I understood more than they did in a lot of situations. So, that just felt very mature to me, and I was like pleasantly surprised by it. So this is when they bail, and then they go. This is really, really cute. They enter the main concourse and have the satisfaction of seeing her catch her breath, golden light at once brilliant and comfortable, spun down from a huge high vault upon a great tropical garden, dark with foliage, vibrant with flowers and birds, murmurous with fountains. It's like stepping into a giant terrarium. I feel like a little horned hopper. Exactly, he agreed. The Silica Zoo maintains it, one of their extended habitats. They strolled toward an area given over to small shops. He steered Elena carefully along, trying to pick out things she might enjoy and avoid catastrophic culture shock. That sex aids shop, for example, was probably a little too much for her first hour on the planet, no matter how attractive the pink when she blushed. However, they spent a pleasant few minutes in a most extraordinary pet store. His good sense barely restrained him from making her an awkward present of a large, ruffled, Tau-Cetan beaded lizard, bright as jewelry, that caught her eye. It had rather strict dietary requirements, and besides, Miles was not sure if the 50-kilo beast could be housebroken. They wandered along a balcony overlooking the great garden, and he bought them rational ice creams instead. This was just such a cute little montage. Like, everything that they wind up getting into later on, I liked it against the backdrop of them actually getting to do just touristy things. I thought that this was adorable. And this is when she mentions something about how free it is. And Miles is like, well, you do need to, like, get a permit to have a second child. And she says, like, how do they even enforce it? And he says, permanent contraceptive implants for the women and hermaphrodites. You need the permit to get it removed. It's the custom at puberty. A girl gets her implant, her ears pierced, and and he pauses and gets a little embarrassed and says her hymen cut, all on the same visit to the doctor. There's usually a family party, sort of a rite of passage. That's how you can tell if a girl's available, the ears. And her ears are pierced, and she is suddenly very concerned that this is going to bring some attention. And he's like, yeah, it might. So I just wanted to, like, warn you, because if somebody says something to you, just tell them to fuck off. They don't mean anything, like, disrespectful. They just, the custom here, they are led to believe that this has a certain significance. And I really felt for her in this moment, because, like, it's one thing to know that something isn't meant to be offensive and that it's, like, perfectly acceptable. And it's another thing to, like, be on the receiving end of it and have, like, she winds up assaulting somebody later, and I wasn't even mad at her for it. So anyway, also I just want to say, like, how funny the idea of, like, oh yeah, we're having a rite of passage party because my sister's hymen is cut. It's just one of those things that, for most of the stuff with Baton culture and their approach to procreation and to sex, I think is exactly aligned with my ideas. And then something like this, will be mentioned as just like, oh, it's a fun party. And I'm like, that's weird. That's just weird. You know, I suddenly have like a way more puritanical attitude, and I'm just like, no. But I really do want to like take a moment here and appreciate, and I should have mentioned this way back, but this is the kind of thing that you don't see talked about in books that are written by men that are like, you know, science fiction future books. Dudes don't think about this kind of thing because you guys can just impregnate and walk away. You aren't stuck with the consequences of a pregnancy the way that women are. So it's just not on your minds. I mean, I'm just reading. There's so many things in this sci-fi that are mirrored in the Red Rising. And Red Rising has like, you know, the sort of like connections in the brain for piloting, and they have a lot of like the healing tech, but bitches are still carrying babies like normal. They're still like, you know, the dangers in childbirth and everything. There has been no forward movement on that front, and there's certainly no like automatic contraception that we have heard about. It's just not part of the story. In fact, and essentially like accidental pregnancy becomes a big factor. And I can't help but laugh at a story like this where she is just like, here's what my ideal scenario would be, and we could just take all of the fucking... This is just such a cis woman perspective on how this would all be handled. And it makes a lot of sense, and also is so frustrating that this is just not the kind of thing that dudes consider in their stories the same way. So we have a moment here that I know that I'm like doing this too slowly, and I'm so sorry. I'm going to speed up the pace of things, but I did really want to talk about this, where he came on a field trip to Beta and was very excited because he thought that he'd be able to like finally have sex, and that there would be like no stops on what was available to him. But it says this illusion had crashed and burned very quickly as he found the most fascinating girls already taken. The rest seemed about equally divided among good Samaritans, the kinky/curious, hermaphrodites, and boys. He did not care to be an object of charity, and he found himself too Barrayaran for the last two categories, although Baton enough not to mind them for others. A short affair with a girl from the kinky/curious category was enough. Her fascination with the peculiarities of his body made him, in the end, more self-conscious than the most open revulsion he had experienced on Barrayar, with its fierce prejudice against deformity. Anyway, after finding his sexual parts disappointingly normal, the girl had drifted off. The affair had ended for Miles in a terrifying black depression that had deepened for weeks, culminating at last late one night in the third and most secret time the sergeant had saved his life. He had cut Bothari twice in their silent struggle for the knife, exerting hysterical strength against the sergeant's frightened caution of breaking his bones. The tall man had finally achieved a grip that held him and held him, until he broke down at last, weeping his self-hatred into the sergeant's bloodied breast until exhaustion finally stilled him. The man who'd carried him as a child before he first walked at age 4, then carried him like a child to bed. Bothari treated his own wounds and never referred to the incident again. Age 15 had not been a very good year. Miles was determined not to repeat it. That was so bleak and so intense, and it makes so much sense that like when you're at an age where a lot of people do like the first forays into sexual exploration, that the realities of whatever disability you are dealing with are going to come into really sharp focus, and they're going to be like some really probably unfortunate encounters. And also, again, another like reference to the fact that he has been suicidal. And I love the fact that Bothari probably like knows exactly how he feels in certain ways, you know, and I'm sure his silence is just part of his job, but I feel like there's also like compassion probably mixed into that as well. So this is when Miles overhears some people who are talking about some dude that has gone into a ship and is basically holding it hostage and saying he's going to blow the thing up if they try and get him out of there. And some other dude who owns the ship has some people waiting to do like the junking, and he is paying them extra because they're waiting and is getting very irritated with this guy. And his name is Artie Mayhew. And it's also mentioned that he's a drinker, and later on something Artie says points to the fact that yes, indeed, he has been a drinker. And Miles just feels this immediate kinship with this person that everybody is talking about with this sort of dismissive, like, oh, yeah, that fucking fuck up, you know? It's funny that he has this kinship when, like, Artie has made bad choices, and what has happened to Miles was not by any choice of his. So I don't feel like they're really comparable situations, but it seems like it's just a sort of immediate thing without a lot of logic behind it. So what Miles decides to do, it says he knew he confused strangers as to his age. At first glance, his height led them to underestimate it. At second, his face, slightly dark from a tendency to heavy beard growth in spite of close shaving, and prematurely set from long intimacy with pain, led them to overestimate. He found he could tip the balance either way at will by a simple change of mannerisms. He summoned 10 generations of warriors to his back and produced his most austere smile. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I was told one of you could tell me where to find Pilot Officer Artie Mayhew. And what he tells them is that this man owes him a debt of honor, and he has been commissioned to discharge it. He's going in, like, can you lead me to him? And they basically have run up against, like, well, we don't really have a lot of choices here, so I guess let him in. Let's see how it goes. And eventually, Artie lets him in, and this dude is drunk. He's got some sort of bright green booze that I am assuming is absinthe. And I am deeply uncomfortable with how much of it Miles drinks and is continuing to drink. He really goes for this stuff hard, and I'm just like, hey, buddy, just chill a little bit. Just calm down with that. It's one thing, like, to just be like, hey, don't do too much of this drug or this, you know, this alcohol, period, when you know what it is. And Miles doesn't. He has no idea what this is, and he's just fucking drinking it anyway, and I was just like, bruh, just, okay, you're young. I guess this is just what happens. So he goes in there and is trying to figure out how to get this guy to calm down, and he's got the booze. At one point he considers pouring it out, but then he's like, yeah, but once we're in space, it's going to just be floating around. And he asks Artie, what is it that you want? Like, what are you here for? And, oh, I'm sorry. Vicky just said, fun note, never called out in the story, but same name. Artie is the same character that helped Cordelia escape Beta Colony in Shards of Honor. Oh, Cordelia, did you start him on his downward spiral by tricking this guy when he was a fucking dumb kid? Oh, no. That's so sad. Man. Oh, earlier, Hefe said, I love that people think of Beta like Star Trek people think of Risa, which I believe you, but I also do not know what that means. So, yeah, that's a really fun detail. Thank you, Vicky. So, when he asks him, what does he want? He says, they're going to junk the ship. I don't have any plan. I don't know what I want. Like, this is just a standoff until I fucking fall asleep and they get me out of here, and then they're going to destroy my ship. And he describes there is no experience in life like a jump. If you've never ridden the lights in your brain, colors no man's ever put a name to, there are no words for it. Better than dreams or nightmares, better than a woman, better than food or drink or sleep or breath, and they pay us for it. Poor deluded suckers with nothing under their skulls but protoplasm. Oh, sorry, nothing personal. You're just not a pilot. And I was like, not now he's not, but clearly that's where we're heading. This is something that Miles can do with his mind and still be like involved in daring escapades. So absolutely, that is what is going to happen here. Jeff says Risa, he gives me the pronunciation, is basically the fuck planet. Nice. All right. So Miles comes up with a plan, and he's like, all right, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and talk to this guy and find out how much he paid and see if I can outbid him for this ship. And the whole conversation that he has with Artie and the way he eventually like starts singing to himself, it's very funny to me. And he offers basically like a check with this land as collateral. I appreciated that Mr. Calhoun, who Miles is trying to make this deal with, is like, are you fucking like working with Mayhew? And I was like, that's a really good call. I probably wouldn't have considered that right away. And I feel like a dink for not thinking of that myself. Like, yeah, this would be a well-sorted plan, actually. So, yeah, Miles is just like, I have never met him before today, and this land that I'm offering you gets plenty of rain and yada, yada, yada. And then we find out later that the land is radioactive. And he had been like, you can check with them about the rainfall, etc. But he never warns this guy to check about the radioactivity. So it's essentially, he's scamming the guy. And he's quick to be like, no, but I actually intend to pay the check. I'm not stiffing this guy. It's just the only thing I had for collateral. And I believe you. I do. But also, I can't help but feel like, bad boy, Miles. I'm not really mad at it, but, you know. So they make this deal, and part of the way that they get around the fact that he's going to be arrested for basically what amounts to like an act of terrorism, threatening to blow this thing up, and also like a mental health episode, they have him swear fealty to Miles under Barrayaran custom, so that at the very least, even if we can't like fully avoid this issue, we can slow the Baitons down so much by getting the bureaucracy involved in finding out which of our laws is the one that's like takes precedence in this situation, etc., that we'll be free to go on and do our own thing for the most part, and we don't have to think about this for a while. And later on, when Miles is talking about it with Elena, he says something like, don't worry about it. It'll be caught up in paperwork. And it's the perfect way to handle it. Baitons love it. It totally distracts them and makes them really feel like they're doing something to you. While meanwhile, you're just able to live your life and nothing ever happens. Or if it does, it takes so long that it doesn't really even matter. And I enjoy that. Coming from the position that he does in life, that he has this kind of appreciation for bureaucracy, like this makes a lot of sense. So I'm trying to find the spot here. Oh yeah, this is when he has him kneel, and Bothari is very irritated about this whole thing, but can't exactly stop. He's not doing anything like dangerous to himself, and kind of has to go with it. And eventually they head over to his grandmother's house. This, I expected to hear a little bit about the fallout between Cordelia and her mother when she bailed and went to Barrayar, because last time we talked to Cordelia, she wasn't in touch and we didn't know what was going on there. We didn't, it seemed like she couldn't go home, that it would probably be pretty dangerous to do that. And now we've jumped ahead and everything seems fine. And I am very much like, yeah, but how though? How did that happen? What conversation did they have? And he's got Artie with him, I'm pretty sure. Am I wrong about this? Yeah, the pilot officer, after the briefest introduction, was shipped off to the spare bedroom. I love the fact that he's here with them. You could have had him pledge fealty and then go home, but you brought him to your grandma's, and I guess, why not? Sure. So, let's see. We get this moment where his grandmother says, there's this neighbor of mine has a little problem he thought you might be able to help with, being Barrayaran. He's sort of been saving it for you since we knew you were coming. He thought if you weren't too tired, you might even go with him tonight, since it is starting to be rather disturbing. And I was like, disturbing? Yikes, okay, what is this? But I understand later really what she meant by that word. And it turns out that there is this man who's been coming on his land burning wood, which is a big no-no, and he's about to eat a goldfish that he caught from an exhibit because he doesn't want to register anywhere and get the food that would be given to him, protein slices fresh from the vats. I really want to know, I want to know a lot about that, to be honest. But another moment of Barrayar, just they just give you food. All you have to do is give them your name and stuff, boom. And this is what I'm talking about. Can we just, please, So this dude, as it turns out, is a deserter. And that is the reason that none of the very logical suggestions this man is making are landing for him. Because he can't register anywhere and get tracked by Barrayaran military police. He's apparently deserted in the heat of battle, which carries the sentence of being quartered. And this man, bless his little Baton heart, says, well, he's been quartered here for ages. I mean, that doesn't sound so bad. What's the difference? And Miles is like, bruh, not quartered like in quarters. Well, yes, exactly like in quarters, actually. But yeah, they mean cut him into 4 parts. And this sweet little cinnamon roll angel says, but that would kill him. I fucking crowed outside in my yard when we got to that line. But that would kill him. It was so fucking hilarious to me. It was so unexpected. I expected the result of that the sentencing is being quartered. I expected him to be like, oh my God, that's horrible. But to not even really know what that means is the next level of precious baby. Oh my God. That is so funny. I really lost it, you guys. I was really laughing at that. It's also the way it's written. Quartering, said Miles, not domiciled. Cut in 4 pieces. Hathaway stared, shocked. But that would kill him. He looked around, and wilted under the triple, unified, and exasperated glares of the 3 Baryarans. Batons, said Baz disgustedly. I can't stand Batons. And Hathaway says bloodthirsty barbarians, which, true. Baz being like, I can't stand Batons. I'm like, this is a place where you aren't being, like, drawn and quartered, sir. So maybe you can't stand Batons, but also you probably owe them. Maybe just, like, check your attitude a little bit. And when he says, like, he doesn't tell him who he is. He and when I say he, Miles gives him a Mr. Naismith only as his name. He does not fully let him know who he is. And when he says that I'm being watched by Imperial security, this man who goes by Jessic says, oh my God, what did you do? And Miles says, I didn't ask you that question. And I love it. Just being like, how dare you presume to know my business when you are sitting here hiding? No, we're not having that. Good job, Miles. And this guy immediately apologizes. So he asks this man, like, what it was he did. Finds out he was an engineer's assistant. Oh, you don't say. Just happened to be something maybe perfect for what we're about to do. Really? Okay. And Bothari, of course, has to take a moment and be like, I really hope that you're not seriously saying that you want to harbor this guy. And Miles is like, well, we don't know he's a deserter. And Bothari's like, he admitted it. And he says, well, maybe bravado, perhaps. Oh my God. So eventually he talks about, like, the spirit of the law versus the actual law, and this guy who hired a, like, private army, but then made sure that they were all, like, believable cooks and that they fought with, like, butcher's knives and stuff. Amazing story. I love it. And then he's like, but he was able to get an honorable death, so that's a happy ending. And of course the Baton is like, you guys are fucked up. You know that, right? And what later on when Miles talks to Bothari, he's like, I know that you'd have me turn him in. And my dad would too, because he always follows the law. And Bothari is like, nah, really? And that's all he says. And then it's just, and I was like, that is the kind of thing that would, when I was a kid, people would respond to me about my dad in this sort of way, where I'd be like, well, daddy, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody would be like, well, and this was how I began to, like, slowly piece together that he had a past that was significantly more violent than I realized. So the chapter ends with Elena coming into Miles's room. He is not sleepy, which I have to I have to assume is due to drinking whatever that green stuff was. And he is looking into some different things to be shipped. He wants to find some cargo. And when he points it out, she's like, it's bound for Felice, and the price that you would make is pretty good. Why hasn't anybody, like, picked this job up already? And there's a few things mixed in here. There's a moment where he's making fun, I think, of his dad, like, it's Bothari who didn't want the couch because he says it's, like, one of the most uncomfortable things and blames it for a bunch of his, like, aches and pains. Also, he mentions, I'm afraid I underestimated the time I'd need for the RG-132 to run enough cargoes to cover my note. A little. A lot. Well, quite a lot. Badly. The The ship costs more to run than I'd realized when I finally went to add up all the real numbers. But that's what they're ordering for transport. At some point earlier, there's somebody, I think it might be the guy Calhoun that he was talking to, who's going to let him buy it. And the dude said something like, that's a lot of money, or maybe that's just a bauble to you. And he's like, no, not really. My family doesn't have the money that it used to have. They used to be quite well off. And I was like, that really feels shocking to me, considering how antiquated most of the way Barrayar functions is. I would really expect that being regent would make you quite well off. I'm genuinely shocked. But yeah, so he's going to be having to pinch pennies more than I expected, and I'm very interested in that. That's always going to make there be a little bit of stakes to everything. Of course, I think the stakes are probably going to get much higher than that, but it's a nice, start to it all, you know? And, when she asks, why hasn't anybody snapped up this cargo, he kind of leads her through it in this very sort of, patronizing way. He calls her a clever girl, like she's a velociraptor. And there's a point where it says, yes, he spread the word out like butter. What a line. That is beautiful. So eventually it becomes clear. They are listing this as agricultural equipment when it's fucking weapons. And probably it's going somewhere that's going to be dangerous and that's going to invalidate a lot of their insurance, and he doesn't have to worry about that. And despite all of this sounding great, this is sounding also quite dangerous. And, yeah, he's agricultural equipment, he snickered, I'll bet. Anyway, there's this Felician who claims to be the agent for the company purchasing the equipment. That's another tip-off, that they should have a man personally shepherding this cargo through. I'm going to go see him first thing in the morning, as soon as the sergeant wakes up. And Mayhew, I'd better take Mayhew. And that's the end of the chapter. So I'm very, very excited to see what this kid gets up to. He's really given, Bugs Bunny vibes a little bit, he's just a quick thinker, you know. I am enjoying this a lot. So, all right, guys, I'm going to have to wrap this up. Oh my God. Jeff says that the green stuff he was drinking was Four Loko. Oh, that stuff. What a time to be alive that was. All right, everybody. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.